Good morning, everyone. I'm Nancy Greenberg. I'm the Cultural Arts and Adult Director at the Worcester Jewish Community Center. I'm delighted to be here this morning. We are co-sponsoring this event with the Worcester Senior Center, among other co-sponsors. I would like to introduce our speaker this morning, Dr. Jane Fleischman. Jane Fleischman, PhD, MED, MS, is a writer, award-winning educator, sexuality researcher, and AASECT certified sexuality educator. She earned her MED and PhD at Widener University Center for Human Sexuality Studies. She is on a mission to promote the sexual wellness in older adults and doesn't shy away from the difficult and complex realities of making that happen. She focuses on the contradictions around ageism, sexism, racism, ableism, and all the other ways that people get placed on the margins. Her curious nature led her to her latest accomplishment, the Stonewall Generation, LGBTQ Elders on Sex, Activism, and Ageism, which recently won a coveted Nautilus Book Award. She co-hosts a regular podcast on sex about sex in the second half of life, which she calls Our Better Self. Our Better Half. And she recently completed a popular TEDx talk, Is It Okay for Grandma to Have Sex? She is the proud mother of two really fabulous 20-somethings and lives in Northampton, Mass. She is available for private consultation, and you can reach her at www.janefleischman.com. Please welcome Dr. Jane Fleischman.
But I'm so glad you came for this part too, because it would have been hard for me to talk to you if you weren't here. So I love to talk about sex, especially with older adults. So I want to say a big thank you to all of you for being here today, to taking time out today to listen to me talk about sex. And also a big thank you to Suki. Thank you, Suki. And to Amy and to Nancy and to the Worcester Senior Center and to the JCC. I'm so happy that you all were able to sponsor me today, and it's nice to see Fallon here, and it's also nice to see the folks from Bering Star. Before I start talking, I wanted to ask you two questions. Uh-oh. First of all, do you know what consent means? Consent means that you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, okay? It goes for sex, but it also goes for life. And so today, if there's any time where I say something that makes you feel a little uncomfortable or nervous, you're allowed to get up and take care of yourself, okay? But come back and talk to me later privately and let me know what happened, all right? Because I want you to feel comfortable here today. And if you have any questions that you want to ask that you may feel uncomfortable asking, maybe we'll figure out another way where I can hang around a little bit later and you can come up and talk to me privately. Would that be okay? Great. I do a lot of public speaking, and mostly since COVID, I've been doing it in my own little office on the screen. And I'm much happier to be around you all today in person. So thank you for that too. So the second question I want to ask you is to look around your table. Now, some of you are sitting at tables with only one person or two people. And Suki, could you help me for a moment? I wanted to see if people would have a conversation at their table about a question that I wanted to ask. So if there's anybody who's at a table alone, could you help me help them turn their chair around to talk to other people? That'd be great. So you've got a big table over there, a lot of talkers, I hope. So I'm going to expect a lot from your table, all right? As an older adult, a lot of people think, in the general public, that we're either asexual, meaning we don't ever want to have sex again, or we're hypersexual. You know those stereotypes of the dirty old man, and the lecher, and the cougar, and all of those terrible negative stereotypes. They're kind of ageist, meaning they don't really respect who we are as older adults. Because we may be at one end or another, but we may not. We may be falling somewhere in between. And so the question I have for you is to talk about, what does sex mean as an older adult? What does sex mean as an older adult? I'm going to give you a big 3 minutes to talk, so make sure that everybody gets a chance to talk. Maybe I better give this table a little bit more, you have more people. But what does sex mean, okay? Now, hang on, don't tell me yet. Just turn around and talk to somebody at your table about it if you would be willing. And again, you don't have to, only if you want to. So I'm going to set my timer for 3 minutes, and let's see what happens. Ready? Go. Hi. Okay, you got 30 seconds left. 30 seconds, that's all you got left. Okay, please bring your conversations to a close. And thank the person or those people for talking to you about sex, because we never talk about sex, so thank them. And what I'd like to do is see if anybody had anything that was a discovery, not something that someone else said, but something that you thought about, maybe in a different way. Anybody? Anybody? Any new discoveries? All right, we'll wait a moment and we'll see if any come up later. What I'm going to do for the next part of this presentation is I'm going to give you some research updates. I'm going to give you some tips, and then if you're interested, I have some things that I could give away to you. So if you'd like. And I wanted to start with some stories. A woman in one of my workshops at a senior center at the eastern part of the state came up to me and told me that her husband had been diagnosed with erectile dysfunction 20 years ago. At that point, she said, "That's okay," and they stopped having sex. She said they never had sex again for 20 years. During COVID, he died very suddenly, about, she said, 2 weeks after he tested positive. She came to my workshop because she said, "I would never say that again." She was 87 years old. Another person came up to me and said their mother told them when they were growing up, no sex before marriage. And that's what they told their children. And then their son blamed them for his failed marriage because they had never talked about it before they got married. One woman said that she was a widow, and she'd been a widow for a few years, and she had just started dating. She met a man, she said, and we actually had sex, and it was great. Another person said that they'd been married to the same person for 47 years. And when I talked about something called sex toys, she said, "How could I ever bring a sex toy into my bed? After all this time, he might feel competitive." One woman said that she'd been alone for 20 years and she loved it. And she had never said it in public before, but she hadn't had sex in that long a period of time. And she loved it. She never wanted to have a partner again. One man came up to me at the end of a workshop and he said, "I just can't perform anymore. I can't do my, I don't remember the exact word, it was like my duties." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I just can't get an erection." And I said, "Oh, don't worry. There's toys for that, there's medical devices for that, there's drugs for that, and there's other things that you can do besides penetration." And he looked at me with such delight. And one woman came up to me and said, when I hit menopause, remember menopause? A long time ago for some of us. My doctor said, "Oh, well, you're never going to have sex again." And I said to her, "That doctor, you should fire him." Or her. I wasn't sure who it was. I said, because that's not true. Yes, we have challenges as we age. Physical, mental health, and social challenges. Some of the physical challenges come from our bodies not working the same way as they used to. I don't know about you, but my body has been drooping and dripping and changing for many years. It doesn't look the same as it used to, and it doesn't feel the same as it used to. And yet our bodies can still have the ability to have sexual life in our older ages. Sometimes, as I said before, erections are difficult. I don't like to use the word erectile dysfunction. I find it to be a very medicalized term. I like to think of it as difference. It doesn't go up the same way, doesn't go up as quick, doesn't stay up as long, may not go up at all, but it's different. There's also something called vaginal dryness. For some women, because the Skene's glands aren't able to produce personal lubrication as well anymore because of the lack of estrogen after menopause. The vaginal lining, excuse me, becomes thinner and doesn't become as well lubricated, and penetration can be very painful, and it can cause tearing and damage to the vaginal lining. For some people, desire wanes, and they just don't feel like it anymore. They don't feel like doing it. They don't feel like having sex anymore. For each of these and other physical and psychological issues, there are ways that we can get around it. And for some of us, the social issues are even more apparent. For instance, if we've ever had any kind of trauma and we've lost our partner, it's very hard to contemplate having a new partner because they may not know us that well and they don't understand us as well as our partners did. So if we lose our partner through death or divorce and we find ourselves single at a later time in life, it can be really traumatic and really difficult to think about having somebody new, God forbid, see us without our clothes on. And by the way, whenever somebody says that to me, I always say, just get undressed first, get under the covers, dim the lights, and when that person comes into that space with you, you're about this far apart. They're going to be looking into your eyes and looking into your soul, and they're not going to be judging you because they're probably feeling the same way as you are, a little bit shy and embarrassed and nervous about it. I have more tips later. But sometimes these social issues can extend to our families. For instance, if you've ever met somebody new and you're really interested in them, you might have an adult child who'll say, wait, Mom, Dad, what are you doing? Wait, who do you think you are? What? You can't be doing that at your age. Well, guess what? It's not only can we be doing that at that age, but it's good for our health. Now, some of the researchers have found that when they ask older adults about what sex means to them, they find some very interesting results, one of which is that it makes people feel good, makes them feel young again, makes them feel attractive, makes them feel desirable, and that sex at a later age goes from lust to love and makes intimacy a greater part of their lives. And you know, I don't know about you, but when we were in our 20s, you could rip your clothes off and do it in the back seat of a Chevy and have a great time. Well, now, I don't know about you, but my hips wouldn't work so good in the back seat of anywhere or on the kitchen table. And so you got to be a little bit more thoughtful when you get older. And the benefits to sexual behavior and sexual activity in later life are many, including reducing the risks of heart disease and complications from heart disease, reducing the risks of two of the most prevalent cancers, breast cancer and prostate cancer, reducing pain, reducing anxiety and depression, increasing ability to sleep, and increasing your overall quality of life. Isn't that interesting? So even though people might say, at your age, you should be careful, at your age, it might be good for you. And so I'd like to suggest that we begin to think about sex and aging in a different way. Yes, there are challenges. As I said before, there are physical challenges, there are mental health challenges. You might have some medications that could be problematic. You might have some social challenges. But it's not the aging process that impedes our ability to have a sexual life. It's actually our attitudes and our ability to feel good about having access to our own bodies and to someone else's. Now you might say, I don't know about all this. It's easy for you to talk about it. You're a sex educator. And I'm not only a sex educator, I also have done research, and I do a lot of writing. In fact, I just wrote a blog. You're familiar with blogs? They're short articles that's online called Your Aging Body and how it connects to your sexual health. And for so many of us, we have so much shame and stigma attached to our bodies as we age because, let's face it, when was the last time you saw a positive depiction of an older body? Most brands will sell their clothing based on models that are much younger than we are. And every once in a while you'll see an older person, but it's very rare. In fact, there was a film last summer, I think it was Helen Mirren, it might not have been Helen Mirren, where she actually was naked at the end of the film. It was about a woman who had never achieved an orgasm, and she was feeling like it was her time. And it was such an unusual thing and made a lot of press because you never see a woman's naked body as an older woman. It's often the younger one. And, you know, it's not the same for men, but it can be. Men are often revered for having silver hair, and then women are told to dye their hair. Don't dye your hair. Just let it be. Have a good time. And what I'd like to say is these depictions of older bodies are often pretty negative, and they're pretty damaging, I think, to our own self-esteem. So I wrote this article about how we need to start loving our own bodies as a way to connect to our overall health and our sexual health, because I believe that they're really fundamentally connected. And you know, I went back to school. I don't know if I told you this story, Suki, but I went back to school at age 56. I had just retired from a state job, but I wasn't really ready to retire. I wasn't ready to go to Florida. I wasn't ready to play shuffleboard or whatever it was that I had in my mind. And so I went back to school and I got my PhD at the age of 62. It was probably one of the hardest things I ever did. Well, maybe except for childbirth, but it was pretty hard, especially because everybody else, including the professors, were all about 20 or 30 or 40 years younger than me. It was tough. I remember one professor said to me, "Why do you keep talking about your age?" And it was because I felt so different. I just felt so different from everyone. But I went back to school, and at the last day of our last class, our professor stood us all up in a circle and she said, "What is it that you want to do now that you've gotten your degree?" And to get your PhD in human sexuality, you have to get a MED first. So I got my master's in education. This was my last master's class. Anybody here ever go to college or grad school? Anybody? And you know, at the last day, they really want to make sure you're going to be okay. And so they said, "What are you going to do now that you've gotten your degree?" And I was like, you know, I had some ideas. And one woman said, "I don't know. I'm 23 years old. I don't even know what I can do." You know what I mean? Like, she was so young, she had no idea. And I had already had a long, successful career for 40 years. I felt very positive about my abilities. But they were all talking about wanting to do sex education with young parents or young children or K-12 kids, or they wanted to do work with veterans, or you know, they had all these different ideas. And I was the only person in the class who said, "I think I want to work with old people." And they all looked at me like, "Okay, I guess." And they didn't realize that for those of us who grew up in the 50s and the 60s, we didn't get any kind of sex education back then. The only thing I ever got was this. Hang on a second, I'm going to move away from the mic. They said, "Keep your knees together." Okay. It didn't do me a lot of good. They also didn't explain anything about passion or pleasure. All they talked about was no, 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 no. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. And sure, there are a lot of things that we shouldn't do. Like, for instance, I want to make sure that everyone here, if you are interested in maybe having some fun and having sex, that you use protection. Because for a lot of us, we think, well, a condom? Well, who needs a condom at this age? Nobody's getting pregnant around here. Well, some of you in the back might be getting pregnant, but not too many of us with a lot of gray hair are going to be getting pregnant or getting someone pregnant at our age. I mean, it could happen, but it's pretty rare. But why would I suggest that you need to use a condom? Any ideas? Sexually transmitted infections, right. So you want to make sure that you have a barrier. And again, that's a don't, right? Don't have sex without a barrier. That's really important. But what they forgot to tell us in sex ed, and it was a pretty paltry, sex negative way of talking about sex, was they didn't want us to even know anything about the good parts, the pleasure parts. And so what I want to say is, along with the challenges, because there are challenges as we age, there are also possibilities ahead. And I am a pleasure-based sexuality educator, meaning I want you to enjoy possibilities, discovery, joy, and I want you to practice. Now, people always say that whenever they're teaching a new class, but I want you to practice first on yourselves. Now, I'm not going to say the big M word, because in some cultures they think if you practice on yourself, you're going to grow hair on your palms. Does anybody ever hear of that? Anyone grow up in a religious background where they would slap your back of your hand and say that if you practice any kind of self-loving, that you are going to either go blind or grow hair on your palms? Well, I have it from a researcher's point of view. There's a doctor up here telling you nothing bad like that will happen. So I'd like you to go back and practice and learn about yourself, because there's a term that we use. It's called skin hunger. The amount of touch that you want on your body, and it can change over time. And the places on your body that feel good can change over time. So when you were younger, if the back of your knee was unbelievable, it may not be there anymore. So you need to do a little discovery. And if you have a partner, you can begin to talk with them about it. And if you don't have a partner, you can talk to yourself, and you can begin to think about loving your body in a different way. Does that make sense? Somebody said, I suppose. Okay, that's good. That's good for me. In terms of walking you through some of this, I am anti-aging. Do you get what I mean? I don't believe in all those creams and salves and, for instance, like I said before, hair dyes that you can find as you walk down the aisles of CVS. I believe in being anti-ageism. Do you see the difference? Ageism is that idea that once we get older, we're done. We're all washed up, we can't get it up, we're all dried up, all of those terrible things. And I would suggest that we think about some of the research. For instance, Santos Iglesias and their colleagues found that sexual well-being was a concern for people across the lifespan. In 2018, Milani and Solway found that 76% of older adults said that sex is an important part of their life. And Harris and Orth in 2020 showed that increased self-esteem, self-regard, self-identity are all associated with intimacy at any age. So what their research said in that particular study was that intimacy can help us feel better about ourselves, our own self-esteem. Maggie Syme, who's at Harvard now, found that with her colleagues, it's about sexual well-being, not about sexual dysfunction. If you go to your doctor very often, they're looking for something that's wrong. And she wanted to rethink the way we talk about older adult sexuality in a multi-dimensional way. So there are some people who will never be interested in having sex again. And there are other people who will want it sometimes, and there are other people who will want it more often. In my own research that was published in 2019, it showed that resilience, your ability to overcome the difficulties that are put in front of us, was connected to how you felt about yourself and your relationship. And that relationship satisfaction was a direct predictor of sexual satisfaction. Joan Price, who's a sexuality educator and an older adult herself, she sometimes calls herself the senior sexpert. I love that. She says there's no expiration date on sex. And finally, two of the people that I interviewed for my book said that the best sex they ever found was in their 60s. They're both in their 80s, and one just turned 91 this year. So we need to begin to think differently about sex and aging and pleasure as we become older. We need to shift from this idea of dysfunction to wellness, from loss to variability, from shame and stigma to health and well-being, from this idea that penetrative sex is the only kind of sex to what I call a term that you won't find in the Webster's dictionary, outer course. An outer course, use your imagination, can be any kind of sexual behaviors that don't include penetration. Start with kissing and go from there. You know that there are many other things that can feel good on a body that don't include penetration. And so if penetration is not possible for you, it doesn't mean that sex is not possible. It just means that that type of sex may not be possible. And by the way, for many people, there may be some discoveries that lie ahead. And that's where I wanted to leave you today. I'm going to offer you some time to take a look at some of the toys that are available. And also, I'd like to offer you some condoms and lube, because I wouldn't be a good sex educator if I didn't offer you some free condoms and lube for anybody, even the folks who are just walking in now thinking, uh-oh, what did she just say? So if you're thinking to yourself, I don't really even understand what she's talking about, I wanted to show you something. Anybody know what this is? It's like the gold standard vibrator. It's called the Hitachi Magic Wand. It's big, it's powerful, but it's kind of a pain to turn on. You have to have really good dexterity. Has anybody ever seen that TV show with Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda? It's called Grace and Frankie. Grace and Frankie. They have developed their own line of vibrators. I don't actually like the color of their vibrator, but that's just me. But this is a heavy vibrator. It works great. But what if you've got a little bit of maybe arthritis in your fingers? Or your hands aren't working that well? This would be a difficult one to play with because you've got to push your finger on the button for like 3 or 4 seconds. There's a guy that developed a toy that's a little different than this. Can everybody see it? It looks a little bit like what? Like a starfish? Can you see it looks a little bit like it has points? It's hard to see. Looks like a Jewish star. Okay. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, okay. So it's called a Starzy, and each one of these little points vibrates, and so does the middle. I can turn it on and pass it around, but you can't keep it, okay? You have to return this. There we go. Can I trust you? What's interesting about that toy, it was developed by a trans man who wanted to find toys that weren't gendered. And so when I saw that, I said, hey, this is a great toy for people who also have maybe some mobility issues. He said, yeah, I have a hand problem. And when I told him that I've been using this toy as a demonstrator, ooh, they like it. Be careful. Don't keep it. I don't want you to keep it. He said, well, I've got another one. It looks like an octopus. So you see what he's doing? He's creating toys that are a little bit more friendly looking. I just got this in the mail from him. And he calls this one Princess Puppy Puss. So does this one look like an octopus to you? Sort of. It can be inside or outside. And what's nice about a toy like this, again, each one of these little points vibrates, and so does this. But there's one more that I wanted to show you because it's so cool. So for somebody who is having erection difficulties, this is a great toy. It can fit over the penis, at the base of the penis, and it can even fit over a flaccid penis that isn't erect. And it's so amazing. It has a motor on the inside and a motor on the outside. So the person who is doing the penetrating can feel it. The person who's being penetrated can feel it on the outside. But what's even cooler about this, it comes with 2 watches. Any idea what those are for? Control, no, that's time yourself. That's funny, that's very funny, good for you. They're for controls. So the person who is on the outside uses this one, the person on the inside uses this one, and they can determine how much pressure and stimulation they get. Amazing, right? And it's called, this one's called the Pulse, and it's from another company called Hot Octopus. There's another octopus. Whoa, she lost her cane. That's how exciting this is getting. I'm telling you, the temperature in this building just went up. She's trying to catch up. Well, the good thing is we're taking our time today. We're not going fast. And that's the other thing I wanted to say. I wanted to give you a few more tips, which is that if you're using a sex toy, please remember that word consent. Remember that you want to talk to the person about it. You want to have a conversation. You don't want to just pull out, where is my Starzy? You don't want to just pull out your Starzy or your Hitachi magic wand. It might really make them anxious. So you want to have a conversation. And as my friends who are sex therapists say, have a conversation while you're vertical. Know what I mean? Not horizontal. Don't spring it on them once they're lying down. It's going to really upset the apple cart. Have a cup of tea, have a glass of water, have a conversation with your clothes on. Because that's the thing, is communication. As we get older, we need to take things a little bit slower, and we need to be more careful and thoughtful. So we want to make sure that we are having good communication. Okay, in here, I have some little samples of lube, condoms, dental dams, all sorts of things. And I wanted to offer these to you. They're all free. I get them from these companies. They're happy that I am going around to senior centers all over Massachusetts. One of the companies that I like is called Uber Lube. Great name. And they package this just for seniors. In fact, they said that the formulation is great. It has vitamin E in it. So if you'd like, you can come up and grab some. I want to make sure that you know I have a goal today. I don't usually have a goal for sexuality education, but my goal is that you take as many of these as you can. I'm going to leave these right here. And I wanted to see if you were listening. Whoever can get this question right can win a beautiful glass bottle of Uberlube. Ready? As we age, there can be challenges when we are interested in sexual activity, but what is the other side of the challenge? What else can we have? Anybody have an answer? Yes. You got it! Woo! Can we clap for him? Woo! Come on up. Come on up. Nicely done. Thank you for listening. Oh, I'm so glad you will. There's one last thing I want to say. You may find that the challenges are too great, or you don't feel like it, or you just think, what is with this woman? Enough already. Well, guess what? There's something called responsive desire. There's a wonderful book out by Emily Nagoski, who's a colleague of mine. It's called Come As You Are. Lots of double entendres in my field. And in Emily's book, she talks about two different types of desire: responsive desire and spontaneous desire. Spontaneous desire is sort of what we used to experience when we were in our teens, and we just couldn't wait to pull our clothes off. Maybe we didn't experience it then, but some people did. Well, responsive desire is you begin to have a conversation, and then you plan a time where you want to try to sit down together, okay? And then you plan to have a time where you really want to take your clothes off and have some sex together. And that's responsive desire. To begin that, once you begin that touch, it may begin to start some of the neurochemicals in your brain that trigger desire. Are there any questions before we end this program? I know that the second part is going to be coming up at 11:30. Is that right, Suki? Okay. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions or comments, disagreements or discoveries? Anybody have anything they wanted to ask or say at this point? If not, I'd like to end the way I end all of my workshops, with gratefuls. They've done research on gratitudes, and they've found that not only do the people you say it to feel better, but you feel better when you say something you're grateful for. So I'm going to ask for 3 volunteers who have something that they're grateful for. It could be something that happened in the last 50 minutes. It could be something that happened in the last day. It doesn't matter. All right, well, Suki, I think we're good. If anybody has any questions, as I say, the doctor is in, and you can come up here to my office. It's not really an office. And if you want to look at some of these toys, and I have to get my Starzy back. I don't know who took it. I'll be here for a little while, and pick up your condoms and your lube. If you're interested in being on my mailing list, I would love to encourage you to sign up, because I send out an email twice a month, and it has all my news and my podcasts and new research. So right here. So thank you again. I really appreciate you all coming today.